So now we're going to talk about domain and range. So in math, as you carry on to grade 11 and 12, this is one of the #1 things that gets talked about, domain and range, okay? Everything that we study, you always go back to what's the domain and the range of it. So please make sure that this is a foundation that you get because you need to understand it moving forward. Okay, so domain is all x values. And think about reading a book. X moves left to right. And range talks about all the y values, and it moves specifically from down to up. So how low does something go to how high it goes. Has to be in that order, okay? I always remember it like this. X comes before Y in the alphabet. D comes before R in the alphabet. So there's your match. Okay, in domain and range, brackets are important, so you have to pick what kind of brackets you want. So these squiggly brackets are used when you're just listing a few things. If you're going to list just a couple items, that's what you use. Soft brackets get used in intervals, so if I go from here all the way to here, but don't include the ends. Hard brackets are used in intervals when you go from something to something else, go all the way through, and also include the ends. Okay, then also you need to understand your inequality signs. So this symbol means less than. This one means greater. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Okay, so when you talk about X for domain, and you can talk about Y when you talk about range. Some other symbols. This, what does it mean? X can be an element of, that symbol in math means an element of real numbers. And we talked about real numbers in a past unit. Real numbers are anything. You got your decimals, your integers, your whole numbers, fractions. Those are all real numbers. So another way to say X can be anything is using this. What does this symbol mean? Have we seen that before in math somewhere? Infinity. Okay, so if I talk about order, I would have to go left to right, which means negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay, so if I have this, it means X is an element of I, which is integer numbers. So we've talked about integer numbers. Now those are your negatives, your zeros, and your positive. We've talked about whole numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And we've talked about natural numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay, write the domain and range. Okay, so what is the domain? Domain is all the X values you ever see. And in this example, my X values are just a few items. So when I list a few items, I use the squiggly brackets. And what are my X values that I want to list? 2, 3, and 4 are the X values. and the range. So then I'm saying, well, what are all the y values? So there are only a few y values. So I'm going to list them. So if I list, it means I'm doing squiggly brackets. 7, 8, and 10 is the list of the y values. Okay, same thing for this. So what is the domain? So what are the x values? So I could go 2, 3, 4, 5, but this dot, dot, dot means the pattern goes on. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm not going to list those all. How could we write that as an inequality? X can be what if I'm going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and above, da, 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 da. Would you agree that I'm going above or at 2? But am I doing every single number above 2? Like, am I doing 2.3, 2.4? No. So I'm picking x is an element of just natural numbers above 2. Okay, right? I'm not picking all numbers above 2 because I'm only picking the 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to write this in a different way as well. So that is called a set notation. And now I'm going to write it as an interval as well. So that's a set notation. So now I'm going to write it as an interval. So where do I start and where do I go to? Hard bracket, because I include 2. And then I go on, up, 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 up. And it will never end because it says the pattern goes on and on and on. So I'm going to go from 2 exactly to infinity. So that's the same thing as writing that. Above or equal to 2. But only the natural numbers that are above that. And the range, so what are the y values? So 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. It looks like if the pattern went on, the only thing I could see is 4. That's the only thing inside my set. Okay, number 3. Can you write it? It's exactly your number 1 example. Look on your number 1 example. You're doing the exact same thing. You're just listing squiggly brackets. There's a few items to list, and then that's it. So can you tell me what's in your domain and then what's in your range? Domain is the input, range is the output. X is input, Y is output. Okay, write the domain and the range. Okay, so domain, x. How far left? What's the most left x value? So on the x, I'm looking this way. This is -1, -2, -3, -4. Exactly, it hits -4, so square bracket. Up to, what's the most right? 2, exactly. So how do I write that as a set notation? X is less than or equal to 2 and greater than or equal to -4. X is between those places. Okay, range. What's the lowest you go? -3, exactly. Up to a highest height. The height up here is 3, exactly. How do I transfer that into inequalities? Y is less than or equal to 3 and also greater or equal to -3. Okay, number 5. Domain. What's the most left this graph would go? So there's an arrow here, meaning it's going. So it's actually going to travel on forever to the left. So that number is called negative infinity because it's going to go forever left. And when you put infinite symbols, they're always round brackets because it's not an exact, precise thing. Comma. How much right do we go? Well, there's also an arrow on this side, so the graph is going to travel to the right forever. How do I write that in a different way? X can be an element of any real number. So this means X can be anything. This means X can be anything. Okay, range. What's the lowest the graph ever goes? The lowest it would go. So I'd be looking exactly at this point at a height of -2, exactly. To the highest height, what's the height it would go on at the top? Well, there's an arrow, meaning it's just going to travel up. So I write infinity. How do I write that as an inequality? What is y? Y is anything greater or equal to -2. This means the exact same thing. No, you can pick which one you want to write, but you should be able to recognize both. Most of the time when we work like this, but I noticed that a lot of the provincial documents use a lot of this stuff. Okay, domain, range. What's the most left this graph would be? So -2, not exactly. So I'm going to write a soft bracket, a round bracket, because it doesn't exactly go to -2. To the most right, where do we go to the right? Arrowhead, so forever. X is what inequality? Above -2. So do you notice how there's no equal sign on this one? Because it's a soft bracket. You notice how this one, hard bracket, there's an equal sign on it. So hard brackets mean you can be touching it, on it, equal to it. Soft brackets are not equal to it. Okay, range, what's the lowest height you reach? So the height of this point is 1. Soft bracket. Because I'm not ever going to reach 1. I have an open dot there, so it gets close, but then it can't touch. Lowest, comma, highest. What's the highest height you ever go? Up, 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 up. So y is what as an inequality? Greater than 1. Okay, number 7, a few pairs of points. So what do you do when you have just a few pair of points? You write the examples with squiggly brackets and you list. So for instance, the domain is 2, 3, 5, 6, and 8. And when you write the range, you actually should write them in an order, like lowest to highest. So you see how it's like a 4, 8, 2? I don't want that. I want you to try to write these. So for instance, I would put 2 first. Would I mark you wrong if you wrote them all mixed up? No, but you should write them just in an order. Okay, last one. Okay, I'm going to pay attention to what's on the ends of this graph. Okay, so this end had a dot, a definite dot. So I already know I'm going to have that square bracket piece. And then this end has an arrow, so I already know I'm going to be putting infinite on the ends if there's an arrow. So domain, the most left would be -5 square, because it touches exactly. To the most right, the graph is heading forever right and down. X is what if I want to write it as an inequality? Greater or equal to -5. The range. Lowest. You have to start lowest. So what is the lowest this is? What? -infinity. Did you pick that? -infinity is the lowest it will go because it's going down, down, down. You have to put that first. Comma, highest. So did you write that it would reach a height of 5 at the top? So how do you write that as an inequality? Y is what? Less than or equal to. You got to write that the other way because it's below that, right?